Hey church family, thank you for joining us for our last Daily Connection video of this week as we are finishing up our time talking about hard times, the pitfall of hard times or trials. And we're going to be also finishing up a section here in James. And Brother Brent was able to walk through yesterday verses 9 through 11, encouraging those who are wealthy to find humility in their circumstances, right? Because all their wealth, everything they have is going to wither away. And so here today, we're finishing up this section as he's talking about trials. He's going to continue a little bit more, but this verse right here is a great stopping point for us. So we're going to look at verse 12. It says, "Blessed is the one who endures trials, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him." Now, the word blessed, or blessed as some people might say, it's kind of referring to this joy, this happiness, right? And we know that happiness is fleeting, but so it's more than happiness, but maybe not exactly joy, because it's coming specifically from the Lord, right? Joy is not always happy. Sometimes we can have joy and not be happy, but we can be blessed and often are happy when we're blessed. It's a gift from the Lord. And he's saying, blessed is the one who endures trials, right? And so when he's talking about enduring trials, he's not talking about that we just live through them, but as we mentioned on day one, we live through them with an eternal perspective. We turn to the Lord through them. We find joy through them. Our faith grows and we become more like Christ through those trials. He says, blessed is that person. Now, you and I would typically say that we're not blessed when we go through trials, especially in an earthly perspective, because typically trials don't make us happy. But here, James is making the argument that if we endure trials and pursue the Lord throughout the endurance of those trials, that God is going to bless us. And maybe that blessing doesn't exist here on earth. In fact, it's pretty clear here. In the second part of this verse, he says, because when he has stood the test, when he's walked through the trial, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. That crown of life, eternal life. Now, we could potentially have some sociological issues here. Is James suggesting that we must endure trials well in order to have eternal life? Certainly, James has had some issues, or people have had issues with James and his understanding of salvation. Some people say that James encourages a works-based salvation. I think if you truly look at the book of James and how it coincides with the rest of the Bible, we see that James doesn't encourage a works-based salvation, but the point that James makes is that those who are saved will have good fruit, right? And I think that's what really James is saying here, that those who stand the test, those who endure trials and rely on the Lord as they do it, that is proof that they are believers, and that is why they receive the crown of life. They don't receive the crown of life because they endured those trials and leaned on God. They receive the crown of life because they're believers, and that is why they endured those trials and relied on God. It's proof, right? It's proof that they are believers. And I think you and I, we can look at our own lives and we can, if we're sitting here, we're saying, man, do I truly trust the Lord? Is there proof in my life that I trust the Lord? Then let's look and see, how do you walk through trials? How do I walk through trials? When we face those difficult circumstances, do we rely on the Lord or do we rely on others? If you find yourself turning to others before you turn to the Lord, then do you even know the Lord? Certainly, we can have the temptation to figure things out on our own. Man, our hearts are deceitful. James 17:9, our hearts are deceitful. Who can understand them, right? But we typically try and follow our hearts when we walk through those difficult circumstances. But as believers, as we walk through trials, we're to rely on the Lord. And that proves our faith. And we are blessed because of it. Our author gives us a couple of questions that we can look at. The first question, where do you seek happiness? Do you seek happiness in the Lord? Do you seek blessedness in the Lord? Or do you seek it in the world? And the second question, what does it take to find eternal happiness in God? What does it take to have that crown of life? I think both of us, or all of us, would say, and I hope we would say, it's faith in God, trusting our God, placing our life in his hands, falling under the lordship of the Father, and saying, hey, we will take on whatever you want us to take on, God, because your way is the best way. Here's from me, I pray that is your cry, that God's way is the best way. And whether you're walking through trials right now or you're walking through some of the greatest moments of your life, I hope and I pray that in the midst of it all, you seek the Lord and your life proves the relationship that you have with Him. Church family, I want you to know that we love you. We're praying for you.